Send Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, and all your Memphis Grizzlies to the 2023 NBA All-Star Game in Utah this February. You can vote daily through January 21st at NBA.com or via the NBA app. Do your part, vote today, and send your favorite Grizz to the All-Star Game.
Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, it dunks! Oh, my goodness! Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heave is gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant! Oh, he hit it! Ja Morant, insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Grizzlies win edition. My name is Keith Parish. The Grizzlies won their 6th straight game. That is the longest active winning streak in the NBA. They defeat the Utah Jazz. The Grizzlies are tied for first place in the Western Conference with the Denver Nuggets. This is the latest into the season the Grizzlies have ever been tied for first place in the Western Conference. They are one game better through 39 games than they were last season. They're 26-13. Last year, of course, they got off to a pretty slow start after the first 20-some games. This is not the best start ever through 39 games. That would be the 2014-15 season. The Grizzlies were 28-11. But the Grizzlies are progressing nicely through this regular season. They beat the Utah Jazz on Sunday, a Jazz team which had already beaten the Grizzlies twice this year. In those two losses, the Grizzlies weren't at full strength. Also on Sunday in this win, the Grizzlies were not at full strength. Ja Morant did not play. He was held out on the first night of a back-to-back. Steven Adams missed the game with a non-COVID illness. Brandon Clark remains on the sideline with some hip soreness, but Tyus Jones got his 6th start of the season. Xavier Tillman got his first start of the season, and the Grizzlies take care of business. The Grizzlies got a season-high 16 steals, also made 15 three-pointers. Another angle to this one that I think is no small part of it is the Jazz were on the second night of a back-to-back. A lot of their guys did not play heavy minutes. Larry Markkinen played 29 minutes, not in foul trouble. The Jazz were on the second night of a back-to-back. Not only that, they were playing at 5 p.m. on Sunday after having played a game that started at 7 p.m. the night before. The Grizzlies had 2 days off before this one. So this wasn't just a rest advantage game for the Grizzlies. It was just a massive rest advantage game for the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies got off to a good start. Well, that's not totally true. The Grizzlies had a slow first quarter, but much like they did against the Magic in the game on Thursday, kind of a slow start, or you didn't score a bunch of points in the first quarter. You had a long dry spell, but then in the second quarter, you exploded with points. The bench has been making three-pointers. Against the Magic last Thursday, the Grizzlies had a 43-point second quarter. That was tied for the highest scoring second quarter in Grizzlies franchise history. Guess what? Against the Jazz on Sunday, they scored 43 in the second quarter again. They once again tied their franchise record for the most points in a second quarter. Another way to point it out is to say, through the Grizzlies' first 2,184 games, they had one second quarter where they scored at least 43, and now they've done it in 2 straight games. The bench against the Jazz on Sunday was 5 for 6 from 3 in the second quarter. Overall, they made 7 out of 10 threes in the second quarter. The big run of this game was the end of the second half, or the end of the second quarter, leading into halftime. They scored 17 points overall in the last 4 minutes of the half. Santi Aldama made a bunch of huge plays. John Conchar had a really nice sequence in here where he tapped out an offensive rebound and the ball came back to him. He knocked down a 3. Xavier Tillman had some of his goodness in this one. I mean, I'm going to get to Jaren Jackson Jr., who was once again a monster. But let's start off maybe with a Xavier Tillman game. Xavier Tillman throwing some assists in this sequence at the end of the second quarter. He finished with 9 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 steals. I mean, multiple alley-oops to Santi Aldama. I believe Santi had 3 dunks in this game. The last 3 games for Tillman, he's averaging 8 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game, 2 steals per game. This is a guy who gets a lot of DMPs. I've always been a fan. He is, limited in his size. He's limited in his ability to finish. He's not a great finisher. He has a very soft touch, but not as accurate as you might hope. But he's a great positional defender. He's a good passer for a big man. And you see him rewarded with his strong play in previous games where he gets the start in this one and has some really, really nice moments. Now, let's talk about Jaren Jackson Jr. Jaren Jackson Jr. in this game, 19 points, 9 rebounds, 5 block shots, and 3 steals. Actually, check that. They took a rebound away. 8 rebounds, 5 blocks, 3 steals. He also, by the way, fouled out of this one. This is his first foul out of the season, which you already knew if you've been following along closely. This was Jaren's 3rd game this season with at least 5 blocks and 3 steals. The entire rest of the NBA this season has 1 game where a player had at least 5 blocks and 3 steals. It was Anthony Davis. So there have been 4 games this year where a player got at least 5 blocks and 3 steals, and Jaren Jackson Jr. has 3 of them. In his career, Jaren has 4, 3 of them this season. That is the most such games in Grizzlies franchise history. Marc Gasol had 3 in his entire career. Jaren has 3 this season. In all of those 4 games in Jaren's career, where he's had at least 5 blocks and 3 steals, he's made a 3-pointer in each one of them. So here's a fun, random piece of trivia. The all-time most games in NBA history for a player having at least 5 blocks, at least 3 steals, and 1 made 3-pointer. Andre Karolinko has the most at 14. Josh Smith has the second most at 6. Anthony Davis is 3rd with 5. Jaren is 4th with 4. Jaren Jackson Jr. in his last 2 games, averaging 25 points, 9 rebounds, 4 blocks. Jaren Jackson Jr. right now, and I'm definitely a prisoner of the moment. I am really enjoying what he has shown this season, but specifically the last couple of games. For me personally, this is the first time in Jaren's career where I believe that he is probably going to make an all-star game. Up until this point, I was hopeful that he would one day be an all-star. I don't know if it's going to be this season. It's going to be a hard hurdle to overcome. The start of the season missing games, and for whatever reason, the media really latches on to eliminating players for not playing enough games. But for me personally, up until this season, I was hopeful that one day Jaren Jackson Jr. would be an all-star. Now I think it is likely at some point he is going to be an all-star. He probably is the favorite in the NBA right now for Defensive Player of the Year. The narrative, which is a big part of it, is building because of all those advanced stats, the rim protection numbers, the fact that teams are shooting 40% when he's on the court. The Grizzlies did not have a super sharp defensive game against the Jazz on Sunday. I mean, the Jazz are a very good offensive team. Also, no Steven Adams, no Brandon Clark. It makes sense you wouldn't be as good. But before this game, opponents were shooting 39.9% when Jaren was on the court. Not just the player Jaren's guarding. I'm talking the entire teams. When Jaren's on the court, they were under 40%, which is nuts. Hard to imagine. But Jaren is probably, he's going to be first team all defense again. He might be defensive player of the year. He possibly could be the favorite right now. But he's adding the offensive game. And he's averaging close to 17 points. And with the efficiency he's doing it on this year, with the steals too. He leads the NBA not just in blocks per game, but in blocks and steals combined per game, averaging over 4 combined steals and blocks per game. And we're seeing it, I talked about it with Chris Harrington on the show on Friday, we're seeing it where he's getting to the basket with those left-handed shots, those left-handed layups swooping in. He made a big 3 in this one in the fourth quarter when the Jazz had cut into the lead. It was getting kind of close, kind of uncomfortable. The Grizzlies are not finishing these games very well. They're getting out to big leads, which is good. They're scoring a lot of points in the first quarter. Those 43-point second quarters have contributed to the Grizzlies in their last 3 games. They've scored 66, 65, and 76 in first halves. We saw this last year too, where all of a sudden the offense started opening up and they were having huge first halves. But when things slowed down in the second half, when the Jazz, they cut it to within 1 a few times in the third quarter. In that final stretch before he fouled out, Jaren scored 6 straight for the Grizzlies, made a huge 3-pointer to put him up 9. He drove and dunked, a nice 2-hand dunk getting past Jared Vanderbilt. Maybe that was the hammer nail coffin moment. I don't specifically remember when Pete said it, but it felt like that kind of closed the game off. It also followed a pretty funny moment of basketball karma. It was funny for Grizzlies fans. It was not funny for Jazz fans. Kelly Olynyk drew a foul on Xavier Tillman with a pretty big flop. He took a dive and drew an offensive foul. It seemed like maybe Taylor Jenkins was considering challenging the offensive foul call. On the very next play, Kelly Olynyk twists his ankle a little bit, loses control of the ball. He does hit feet with Xavier Tillman. That's normally a foul. I think the officials understood that Olynyk took a pretty big dive on the previous play, and maybe because of that, they held their whistle a little bit, and the Grizzlies get the turnover and end up with that Jaren Jackson Jr. dunk. Jaren, by the way, now has 10 consecutive games with multiple blocks. That is the longest streak in the NBA this season. That is tied for the longest streak in Grizzlies franchise history. Pau Gasol also had a 10-game streak back in 2007. Jaren has been a monster. It's great to see, and he definitely needs to be inserted in the All-Star reserve conversation. He's not going to get voted in. By the way, it looks like Ja Morant also might not get voted in. I don't know how he's going to overcome the lead Luka Doncic and Steph Curry have for the backcourt. But we're not in danger of Ja Morant missing the All-Star game. He'll be a reserve no matter what. Because of the injuries, it's going to be hard for Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. to get there. But I think Jaren has a chance, especially if the Grizzlies keep winning. Over the next month, the winning is going to be the most important thing. Also, by the way, if you don't know, the Western Conference team that has the best record, I don't remember the exact date cutoff, but whichever team is in first place in the West, that coach gets to coach the All-Star game. So Taylor Jenkins has a very, very strong chance to be the All-Star game coach. Of course, no Grizzlies coach has ever been the All-Star game coach or one of the 2 All-Star game coaches. So that's something that could be an awesome honor for Taylor Jenkins that will be a reflection of the team's success. Also in this game, Tyus Jones. Let's talk about Tyus Jones. Tyus Jones with an awesome game. He, much like the team, kind of a slow start. But then Tyus crushed the third quarter. He finished with 21 points, 6 assists, and 4 steals. In the 6 games he started this season, Tyus is averaging 20.7 points per game, 8 assists per game, 2.3 steals per game, and he's made 50% of his three-pointers. Before last season, this guy had one 20-point game in his career. Now, in 6 games where he's been the starter, he's averaging 20.7 points per game. Some people were moaning about his play earlier in the season. I hope I wasn't one of those people. Tyus Jones stepped up in a big way. He stepped up huge this year as a starter. The Grizzlies lost the first 3 games he started, but now they've won the last 3 where he started. Desmond Bane in this one refound his 3-point stroke. We finally saw the pull-up in transition Desmond Bane. We saw him knocking down multiple 3-pointers. By the way, he tied Shane Battier for 7th in all-time made threes in Grizzlies franchise history. By the way, I don't know if you know this. Dillon Brooks has the 3rd most made 3-pointers in Grizzlies franchise history. Fun fact. Bane finishes with 24 points. He also had a career-high 9 assists. 1 game after posting a career-high 11 rebounds and getting his first career double-double against the Hornets, he comes out and almost gets another double-double with 24 and 9. The other starter, Dillon Brooks, not his finest hour, and we can talk about that and some of the strong play off the bench right after this short break. Don't miss the next Grizzlies Nashville watch party hosted by me and the guys from Fast Break Breakfast. We will be at Noble's Beer Hall on Friday, January 20th for the late game as the Grizzlies take on the Los Angeles Lakers. Come on out. The game starts at 9 p.m. We will be there giving away Grizzlies prizes. It'll be a great time for all Grizzlies fans in the Middle Tennessee area. Once again, Friday, January 20th, 9 p.m., Grizzlies vs. Lakers at Noble's Beer Hall. See you there. Dillon Brooks did not have one of his better games. It was a pretty bad offensive game from Dillon. 6 for 18 from the field. Got 2 assists, 3 rebounds. Didn't turn the basketball over, which is pretty good. He was really, really cold in the first half, and what felt bad to me was he just kept shooting, trying to shoot his way out of it. It did not seem like he was attacking the basket like he needed to. There were those lulls in the first half, and a lot of that was just Dillon kind of bricking shots. He did come through with some big makes in the second half, so you'll just live with those nights from Dillon. Now, off the bench, we got a lot of really solid play. I already talked about Aldama, making a lot of dunks, having a nice game with 12 points and 5 rebounds. But because Tyus Jones started, because Xavier Tillman started, that left the guys off the bench as Kennedy Chandler, John Conchar, David Roddy, Santi Aldama, and Zaire Williams. Only one traditional big among those 5 with Santi Aldama, so that led to the Grizzlies using some unique lineups that they haven't used in any previous game. Notably, at the start of the second and fourth quarters, Jaren Jackson Jr. finally played a lineup where he was the only big. You had Chandler with Roddy, Conchar, and Zaire alongside Jaren. So it's the only lineups this season where Jaren was the single big. And I guess in that you have Roddy and Zaire as your other front court guys. Now, Roddy has been playing great. I am really encouraged and have really enjoyed the last couple games from Roddy. It feels like he's already learned and adapted that one of his pet moves that he brought into the NBA wasn't going to work. He got it blocked a few times where he just tried to shoot a layup, being bigger than his opponent. And he's already adjusted, and he's learning to use his body, use his shoulders, where he gets it into the defender's chest, and it makes the defender unable to stop his layup. And he's been finishing really nice. Seems like he's very, very poised out there. So Roddy's looking really, really strong. Zaire. All right, this is encouraging. After the breakout game against the Magic, Zaire looks very fluid. He's made a 3-pointer in 6 straight games. He's 8 for 17 from 3 in that stretch. So Zaire playing much, much better. He's still yet to recover a loose ball this season. We're pulling for you. Surely it will happen soon. Kennedy Chandler, you give him a lot of credit for what he did out there. I don't know if it made you feel old or nostalgic or strange when he stole a pass from Mike Conley. It made me feel something. I haven't exactly put my finger on what the sensation was, but young Kennedy Chandler holding his own, honestly, with Mike Conley at times. He looked very under control, got 4 assists against only 1 turnover. I really liked how Kennedy Chandler played. And again, you got a lot of strong contributions from the bench. I mean, Chandler, Roddy, Zaire, Conchar, and Santi, every one of them, I think you would say had a decent game. And clearly that's what you need if you're going to be shorthanded and you're going to take out a Jazz team, which is a little bit tough. I mean, the Jazz got a solid game from Lauri Markkanen, although I would not put him in the All-Star game over Jaren Jackson Jr. personally. And Walker Kessler off the bench had a double-double. He had 6 blocks. The Grizzlies kept going right at him, thinking maybe this time he won't block my shot. No, he's going to keep blocking your shot. But now the Grizzlies have a quick turnaround. They play the Spurs. The Spurs are real bad. They play the Spurs on Monday night. Hopefully they take care of business against them and they can continue this push up in the Western Conference. And then we have to look forward or look ahead to the trade deadline. Now, I've basically been reticent to talk about trades. I can't envision a lot that make a ton of sense. I talked some about trades with Chris Harrington last episode, but I will later in this week come up with a list of trades that I do think maybe the Grizzlies should pursue. Normally I have a ton where I'm ready to make a deal, but I don't really see a lot out there that make a ton of sense. I think it's important to remember when doing all these trades, if you're trading for players, you obviously have to get rid of players. And the easy one to get rid of, everyone says, it's Danny Green. I still, in my mind, not having the insider knowledge, not having access to Danny Green's medical records or the, required knowledge of a doctor to be able to know what the records mean. But if Danny Green has any chance of coming back, I don't see anyone out there who's better than Danny Green you're going to get for Danny Green. So that's one reason why I feel like, all right, they're going to stick with what they have. The other reason is I don't know who you're getting rid of. Like they're not going to trade Roddy or LaRavia or Kennedy Chandler, I wouldn't think. And then they're not trading Dylan Brooks, guys. And then it's like, are you going to trade Tillman? You could, but what are you getting for Tillman and Danny Green? But anyways, I will, at the very least, come up with a list of names for you guys and some what I consider to be realistic trade options later in the week. I mean, some of you guys wanted to trade for Jordan Clarkson. Do you still want to trade for Jordan Clarkson? Who knows? Anyways, that is the full episode for today. A nice solid win for the Grizzlies. 6 straight. I love it. I mean, this is now 5 separate win streaks of at least 6 games for the Grizzlies in the past 12 calendar months. I feel like it's adding years to my life. Anyways, hope you have a great Monday. Talk to you soon. Go Grizz.